Hello and welcome to Irish Football Fan TV. It's myself and Paul here in studio. We've got so much to talk about between Damien Duff's exit from Shelbourne, the Dublin Derby, the League of Ireland teams obviously coming into Europe soon. But Paul, I suppose we'll start with some very interesting news, exciting news from the Premier League, where Keith Andrews appears to be about to be appointed as the new Brentford manager after Thomas Frank was obviously signed for Spurs as their new manager. Very exciting news.
Yeah, he's obviously gone in there as like a set piece coach. I think not long after leaving Ireland with Stephen Kenny. He was obviously Stephen Kenny's assistant and a coach for Kenny's entire reign, and I think the under-21s as well. I know he's definitely there for he was there for the whole lot of that. So he's kind of been since around 2018 kind of really taken on board, because before that he was doing a little bit of punditry. He was on Off the Ball, Virgin Media and all these different things, and he's put his hand into coaching, and ultimately he's worked his way up the ladder, and now he's got a Premier League job. I'm happy for him. He's going to be working with Nathan Collins and Caoimhín Kelleher, so there's a good Irish link there. He'll know them players very well from the underage setup at Ireland as well. And I think, look, a lot of people really begrudgingly like being a smart ass about this, like without giving him a chance to prove anything. He's gone in there with no Premier League experience as a manager. He's never been like the first team coach, so I'm interested to see how he gets on, and I hope, as an Irishman, I hope he does well. And you know what we don't know what could happen if he ends up doing well, or where he could be in a couple of years' time. He could be the Ireland manager in the future if he does well. So I always like to see an Irish manager doing well in the Premier League, and we don't have very many to choose from, and we haven't either. Let me just mute my phone there. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think you were saying about, a couple of people kind of making light of this and kind of making fun of it as like kind of a random appointment, talking about him being the set pieces coach and having a laugh at that. But Brentford, of all teams in the Premier League, aside from maybe Arsenal, rely so much on their set pieces that he's been like a really important part of their success over the last couple of years. And don't get me wrong, like Brentford have been a solid Premier League club, stable Premier League club since they've been promoted. And obviously I'm sure Brentford fans won't be happy that Thomas Frank is gone now, because in his own right, he's a legend there at Brentford, really. But great from an Irish point of view that someone is back as a manager in the Premier League, obviously following on from the likes of Mick McCarthy, Roy Keane, Chris Hughton, I believe, was the most recent with Brighton, the most recent Irish manager in the Premier League. So really exciting news. I know he was highly touted actually when he came into Ireland with Stephen Kenny as a kind of exciting prospect as a coach. So I'm really excited to see him back in the league. And hopefully goes on to do bigger and better things as well from that.
Yeah, Martin O'Neill hammered him today,
Yeah.
I saw. Obviously, there's a bit of bite there between the two, because under the back end of O'Neill's reign, Andrews was quite critical of O'Neill and Ireland at the time. But O'Neill had a little bit of a swipe and said he'll know all about management now, and it's not nice when people are basically criticising you all the time and stuff like that. Look, it's a bit of tit for tat, really, in my opinion. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just rehashing a sort of old beef, wasn't it? There was kind of back and forth in the past, like you said, when Martin O'Neill, when things were kind of coming to an end there, and Andrews, like you said, was kind of dabbling in punditry at the time. Obviously, to be fair, Andrews did go into the Ireland setup after Martin O'Neill and found out how difficult that was. So I do see both sides of that. Having said that, I think Martin O'Neill might be holding a bit of a grudge here, and I kind of just hope for the best really for Keith Andrews. I have no problem with him as a coach or as a pundit at the time. I think he was just giving his opinion, as we all do. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does at Brentford. I know thrown right in at the deep end with a Premier League club as your first job, not easy at all. It's going to have a lot of pressure on them. I know Brentford aren't the biggest club and don't have maybe the media spotlight that other clubs do, but still, to live up to the success that Thomas Frank has had there, and he's going to be helped out, of course, by two of Ireland's very best, in Caoimhín Kelleher and Nathan Collins. So I think it's a positive. And not to move it on too quickly, but there was talk that Damien Duff, after his Shells exit, was going to come in as his assistant, but of course that was kind of dismissed there yesterday. But moving on to Duff, the shocking news came out on Sunday afternoon that he had informed his players at training that he was going to be leaving them. That he said that he had taken them as far as he could. Obviously, it's no secret that it's been a difficult season, I would say, for Shells. I believe they're 5th in the league, 14 points off Rovers. Obviously, unbelievable season last year. Legend at Shells, like you say. And I want to actually give you the chance, before I actually get your opinion on the the kind of bigger picture of this. Just give us a sense of what Shels fans' feelings are on this, because I know you'd be kind of more in those circles than maybe most of us would.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of a right way of leaving and a wrong way of leaving, and I think a lot of the fans think he left the wrong way, just to suddenly just get up and leave. That was what was predicted that was going to happen in his first kind of 6 months. That's the way people were looking at the situation, that you would leave after 6 months and he'd just walk away from it. But obviously he was there. I think this is his fourth season. He was, this would have been the fourth season. So what he'd built and everything like that, an empire that he'd built, like, he definitely has left the club in a better place than he found it. So you can't say he hasn't done that. But just how transformative he was as a coach and how much he made Chelsea fans feel like they could believe again. And obviously he backed it up with actions in terms of the league and in terms of cup finals and, Chelsea being back in Europe. He reached milestones very quickly that I don't think any other manager would have. And I think even Joey O'Brien referenced it on Off the Ball. And Mark Coyle kind of said it as well, in terms of like he changed the players' lives and stuff like that. So I think as well as changing the players' life, he also changed a lot of fans' lives who had been and seen so much heartache over the last 20 years. You're going back 20 years since they played Deportivo, so I remember those games as a kid, going to those games vividly, and then the yo-yo up and down in and out the first division, not where the club should be considering how historic the club is and how big of a club it is. So I think that's why the people are very disappointed, because they believed with Duff he could take Chelsea to the next level. But ultimately what it seems like from the outside looking in is that Duff felt his standards weren't being matched by the players, and he felt he could take the players as far as he could go. That's basically what we're hearing. But then he was kind of calling out the players' professionalism and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people think something happened between Friday and Sunday that made Duff then on the Sunday go in and quit, because nobody knew till the morning on Sunday that even Joey O'Brien, he didn't know that he was leaving. So it was just such a strange situation that none of this backroom staff or anything knew. And then the owner got a call at 10 a.m. to say that he was leaving. And then they spent the morning trying to, and it's just, again, the timing is poor because of how close the Champions League game is. And, imagine how much of it, like, to really kind of finish the story with Chelsea, it could have been a European run or something like that. It could have been a really nice way to go out. But it's just the way it was just so suddenly, like cutting the head off a snake. It's just that's it. There's nothing more to it. Just I'm gone. And then Joey O'Brien's had to come in. But I just overall on Duff, and I think you were going to come on to anyway. I'll just jump straight to it. Like I think us as a channel and why so many media outlets are disappointed in what he's got, like why he's gone. For me, like I've been doing this channel since 2017, and I've been trying to promote the League of Ireland and then bringing people in, and then they've been trying to help the League of Ireland too. Like yourself, all of this, we promote it all the time. And then you get a figure like Damien Duff, who immediately can come in and command respect for the league. And he did that. Like whoever you support and whatever you say, you can try and say he wasn't good for the league. What he did in terms of the League of Ireland, bringing eyes on the League of Ireland and telling people it's the greatest league in the world, and he believes it's the best thing ever. People believed that, and when people were starting to go to games, like people go, oh well, he didn't make people go to games for Bowes or for Rovers. No, but he made the League of Ireland interesting. And whatever about the last couple of months he's been having spats and all with people. People like that. People like entertainment. People like those different sort of things. So to say that he wasn't good for the league, it bamboozles me, because he totally was good for the league, and he brought unprecedented levels of eyes on the league last season with that title race. Albeit people would say it's the worst title race of all time or whatever it was. It went right down to the wire, and it was 10 minutes from going to Shamrock Rovers, and they went up to Derry and beat Derry in Derry's backyard to win the league. And the scenes afterwards, like anyone who's a football romanticist can see where Shels came from to that moment. I was there on the flip side when Shell won their last league. To be there in Derry to see it, it was an amazing moment. It's one of those real football romanticism stories. And for people to just say that he wasn't good for the league, is like he had every opposition clubs, fans on strings every single week. All they were talking about was Damien Duff. The players at Chelsea might find that annoying or something like that he gets talked about more. But I thought that was more of a deflection for the players so they could just get on with stuff, whereas he would take the brunt of it. And again, that's why I thought he was brilliant. Now, the last couple of weeks, he was a bit grumpy and stuff like that. I get that. But I think that's ultimately he was just getting fed up. But I look back fondly at his time, and I always will. And I'll always be grateful. I used to go to games with my dad and my granddad. And I had, my brother, and I had great memories going to the games. And for a long time, didn't have those sort of memories. And then the last couple of seasons under him have been brilliant. And as I said on social media, I got to play a game with him at Talker Park, which was amazing. I grew up idolising this fella as a football player. And now he became the Shelbourne manager. I went to the same school as him. There's so many similarities in that sense that drew me to him. So to see him gone, it's just really disappointing. Whether he comes back to League of Ireland football or not, that's going to be interesting, because he always said the one club that he always ever wanted to be involved with was Shells. So will he go against his word or whatever? If Stephen Bradley goes, does Damien Duff come in for Shamrock Rovers? Who knows? Or if Stephen Kenny gets let go by St. Pat's, does St. Pat's then go and try and get Damien Duff? So his stock is still very much high. It's just, where does he go from here? I think the League of Ireland needs Damien Duff more than Damien Duff needs the League of Ireland. And again, let's not forget, he did this for the love of football. He didn't need the money. He was spending more time spending money on players and getting players, getting them, accommodation and all this sort of stuff. So he'd done a lot for them, and I think they all showed that their gratitude for that. But I thought it was interesting what Mark Coyle said in his interview, just kind of like the way he was saying that players weren't prepared, and then question their professionalism. And he said, we wouldn't have won the league last year if we weren't professional in how we operated. I thought that was interesting. And he also said that when Duff said that, players weren't preparing right for matches, he was like, I don't know how he could see that. So there was definitely something changed definitely on Sunday. Yeah. Whether it's a respect thing or what, I don't know, but you could definitely see that the mood has maybe changed towards him over leaving the way he's left. But look, again, you're talking about Linfield, massive game in a few weeks' time. Can Joey O'Brien be the man to step up and take Shells through that, make himself a legend? Could he be the shining light through all this? Could he be the one who, he's not maybe as out there as Duff, but he's very well respected in the game. He has a good football career. He has a good pedigree. He's done well at Rovers. He knows Europe. It may not be the worst thing in the world, but in terms of an overall thing for the League of Ireland, I think Damien Duff's going to be a great loss.
Yeah, I'll touch back on its impact on the league in a second, but obviously for Shells, it's brutal timing. Obviously, less than a day before their match against Waterford, which they did go down and draw with Joey O'Brien at the helm, only a couple of weeks removed from their Champions League game, like you said, against Linfield. So very rough timing in that respect. From a Shells fan's point of view, clearly bittersweet for you, because on the one hand you want to kind of celebrate this manager who's done legendary things for your club, but then on the other hand you're kind of like, right, well, he's kind of leaving us high and dry here at the moment, with not much of a plan in place to replace him. Obviously Joey O'Brien's going to come in and do the best he can, and we'll see, maybe he comes in full time after that, but that's yet to be seen. As far as his impact on the league, obviously the two sides been very much a debate online, I'd say, over the last couple of days or so, and I think both sides kind of take it a little bit too far. I would say the people who say that he was irrelevant to the league and he made it a bit of a circus, I think that's a ridiculous point of view as well, because undoubtedly he brought more attention to the League of Ireland, was always the League of Ireland's biggest advocate, as you said, calling it the greatest league in the world, saying that he'd not want to be anywhere else but here in the league. So in that respect, I do think he was vitally important to the league, and I'd say some people got tired of the sort of stories and the back and forths with the media, but those storylines are what create a league and what kind of take it to the next level. You remember back in the early days of the Premier League, the likes of Alex Ferguson's battles with Arsene Wenger and then Jose Mourinho after that, moving on to more current day like the Jurgen Klopps and Pep Guardiolas. That's what kind of revitalised the league and keeps people interested. So people who have that point of view, I think, is ridiculous. But to say that the League of Ireland needs Damien Duff, I don't necessarily agree with that either, because, before Damien Duff was here, Dalymount was sold out every week. Richmond was sold out every week. Before Tala got rebuilt, that was sold out every week. You look at Drogheda and Derry down in Cork. The league was already on that upward trajectory. Now, I do think Damien Duff came in and took it to the next level. And that title race that you mentioned last year, Shales against Rovers,
And Derry.
And Derry, of course, for a long time. That was brilliant for the league. For the years gone by, I know it's great. We can all appreciate Shamrock Rovers' dominance over the last 4 years and how great they've been. But that's what brings the interest, the kind of head-to-head, two teams going right down to the wire and they're coming down to the last day, actually the last 10 minutes of the season. Just the drama of that alone, will never be forgotten and brought so many eyeballs to the league. So I do see both sides of it. I think both sides kind of take it too far, and maybe somewhere in the middle is right, because I think the league is still and will be in a good place. But I think this is a big loss because he's probably been the face of the league, I would say, for the last couple of years.
Yeah, but then you think of like money and stuff like that, where money's going to come in from. Like, who's going to be the one who's challenging Stephen Bradley publicly? It's not going to be Stephen Kenny. It's not going to be Alan Reynolds. I don't think that's not his character. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, he can challenge them with his football team and stuff like that. But it's like selling a fight. In boxing, you need people to be the figureheads to also create that drama, because I find, and you'll know this because we've had players who can't come on podcasts because their manager's afraid that they might say something against. That's what Duff wasn't afraid of. He wasn't afraid to say what he believed in, and I think that's why I think the League of Ireland needs him, because he was calling out refereeing standards. He was calling out a lot of different standards that other people were afraid to do, I thought. And then Stephen Bradley then started in the European run coming out and saying things, and then he started actually carrying. But Duff was the one who started all that. So that's where I'm coming from, where I'm saying the league needs him because of how he drove things.
I definitely see your point of view, and I do agree that it's definitely a huge loss. I just don't think it needs him, because I think the league was...
Because you hate him.
All right, you say that in your Shales jersey. No, I think it is a huge loss to the league, and the drama, the storylines was unbelievable, like invaluable entertainment. But I do think the league is still in a good place. I think we've still got the highest level of football in the league that we've had in a long, long time. And I think hopefully that'll keep going in the right direction. As for Shales, not great. It's a difficult position to be in. Although I'd say it's as good of a job as it's ever been at the moment, and that's because of Duff, really, the place that he's brought it back. You touched on it a little bit there. Like, it's not been a fun time for Shales fans over the last 10 years before Damien Duff came in.
Longer.
Longer than that, probably more like 15 years. Being up and down in the first division. So he took them to a place where they probably rightfully deserve to be the kind of stature of that club. Big loss to the league, big loss to Shales. But moving on to more League of Ireland news, it was the Dublin Derby on Monday. Bohs against Rovers. Bohs 2-0. And I have to say, I've been impressed by Bohs over the last few weeks, but not as much as this game. I thought they were absolutely phenomenal, and it's probably as good as I've seen them in a long, long time, like years. And on the other side, Rovers, probably as bad as I've seen them in a long, long time. They've set the standard in this league for so long, and they just really haven't shown up in derbies this year. So do you want to take the negatives of this game or the positives of this game first?
What are the negatives?
Well, the negatives are, I think, Shamrock Rovers kind of didn't show up at all. And I think I was expecting this to be a real back and forth. Bohs, who have been the informed team in the league at the moment, with coming from such a terrible place to playing so well, and Shamrock Rovers running out in front, setting such a gap between them and the rest of the league, and then just didn't really show up at all.
Yeah, well, it's like, look, it's a one-off for Shamrock Rovers because they've been brilliant elsewhere, like the last probably 2 months. Probably going back to the last Dublin Derby where they lost when we were over in Holland. So when Rhys Brennan scored the winner. So I think, look, that it kind of leaves the title race still a little bit open, but I just don't think Bohs are going to be strong enough with the loss of Sean Grehan, who's signed for Doncaster now. So I don't even know why he went there, but just in regards to, he could have probably just stayed another season, maybe got a move in January or something like that. And it might have helped Bohs in terms of maybe trying to get into Europe or something like that. I think that would actually look better on his CV than Doncaster. But anyway, in regards to Bohs, I watched the game on TV. I thought they were very, very impressive. I thought, like, especially Ross Tierney and Dawson Devoy, thought they were brilliant. throughout the game, and obviously that second goal. And James Clark was outstanding as well. Probably goes a bit under the radar at times for how good he actually is. I'm not sure what age he actually is, but I think he's quite young.
24, 25 maybe.
He might be even be younger than that, I think. But yeah, a really, really good player. I just wish he could do it on a more consistent basis, and you'd be talking about him being one of the better younger players in the league, because you're talking about young players in the league, and they were talking about on Virgin, like they were talking about Mason Mealy and Michael Noonan, and they were putting James Clark in that category. So that's why I think he might be a bit younger than what
Maybe
we're thinking.
slightly, yeah.
But he showed that in a position that's not really he's known that well, that he can, he can really force errors, which he did with obviously Captain Pico Lopez, who in those sort of games is a very experienced player. Kept Jack Byrne quite quiet as well. Just Rovers never really got going in this game, but I don't actually think they cared too much, because I think they have half an eye on Europe at the moment. And now they've got the bye in the tie from, no, I meant to rhyme that, but they've got the bye in, obviously with Drogheda they're not getting in Europe now. So I think they have one eye on Europe now, that they're going to be obviously trying to get another run together, which obviously would be really good for them, really good for the league, like last season. But Bows, if they keep going the way they're going, if they can maintain the level that they were at against Shamrock Rovers, they definitely can be in the title race. I just question whether or not they can be consistent enough to do that. I don't think they'll be consistent enough to do that, but I think the league needs a title race, so I hope that they can do it.
Yeah, and I'll touch back on it. Like the first half, it was so impressive, the kind of high press, and it's something that
it suffocated them. Yeah,
it's not often you kind of see like such a clear game plan in the game just plan out in front of your eyes, and it happened in the first 2 minutes when James Clark kind of just chased down a nothing ball that Pico Lopez just kind of seemed to make a meal of. Squares it to Dale Rooney and a great finish, and then the second goal even better, just a brilliant team goal, like you said, Dawson Devoy and Ross Tierney linking up and then cutting it across to James Clark, who taps it away, or it was kind of a mixture between him and Dan Cleary that put it away. Bows, as impressed as I've been with them, to be honest, like this has been a great run that they've been on. I know they slipped up against Waterford away, and it can be a difficult place to go. Waterford have been quite good under Coleman since he's come in. But to pick it back up and then win 2-0 against your closest rivals, or biggest rivals, I would say, absolutely excellent performance. And I would say on the Rovers' point of view, it's not too much to worry about. Like you said, I kind of fall in the same camp. I would be extremely surprised if we're sitting here with 2 or 3 games left and it's still kind of a title race. That's just me being honest. I do not think that Bows are kind of ready to make that next step. I think we would need a replacement for Sean Grehan. And as good as James Clark has been filling in that role up front, I do think we might need a striker as well. But James Clark, you touched on him already. He was brilliant in the first season that he came in from Drogheda, when him and Jonathan Afolabi had that great connection up front. And then last season he kind of played far more of a bit part role. He kind of moved to the bench a bit more. And it's great to see him kind of pick up that form from where he'd left off, because we haven't seen this James Clark in a long time. So brilliant to see. So 2-0 Bows in that game. But moving on to League of Ireland clubs in Europe, which is coming up soon. And your Shells, we've talked about them a good bit already, but they do have this game against Linfield in the Champions League qualifiers. The winner of that tie goes on to play Qarabag in the next round. Your thoughts, expectations, what are you expecting from this game?
I don't know. So I haven't watched Linfield to know exactly what they like. Like, judging both leagues, like our league is stronger than theirs. So we were the champions last season. Are we showing championship form at the moment? I wouldn't say so, but I think let Joey O'Brien cook for a couple of weeks, and you never know. It could be interesting to see what he implements. I don't think there's any point in changing a total different philosophy right now. I just think you kind of just go with what you have there. I think a lot of people will trust Joey to do the job. Mark Coyle said he wouldn't. He's the perfect man to lead Chelsea, so I would trust in Mark Coyle. Who obviously was like Damien Duff's number one soldier in that team, you know what I mean? He embodied everything that Damien Duff wanted, and he made him his captain. But I think he obviously has a lot of respect for Joey O'Brien, so the whole squad. So I think you might as well just stick with Joey in this sense. He's achieved so much in the game. He might not have played in Champions League or won Premier Leagues like Damien Duff, but he has played for Ireland. He has played in the Premier League. He has had a solid career for an Irish manager, and so he has all the pedigree that people should respect him for what he's achieved in the game. So I don't see it being an issue if Joey O'Brien comes in there. It's just whether or not Shells can turn up. I mean, in reality, they're only starting their pre-season now, so Shells are mid-season now, so they should be fit enough. So that might work in their advantage. Chris Shields misses the first game for Linfield, which is obviously huge because he's such a big player. We've obviously seen him in his time at Dundalk, how big he was as a player. So yeah, it's good. Look, it's a great kind of thing because it's local and you can go to both games and stuff like that. So that's nice as well to be able to do that. But it's gonna be an interesting couple of weeks as things hot up. Obviously, Rovers will be in there, and it'll also be interesting to see how Pats do considering their form and can they use that as a kind of a way of turning their form around like they did last season when they went on that incredible run.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they got turned over again by Derry the other night. So
yeah, I'll come back to them in a second, but just in the Shells game, 9th of July, obviously. And Damien Duff actually touched on this before he left, that this has got a real like derby kind of feeling about it. Obviously we know the history going back years with Linfield and Irish clubs, but I think it'll be a great game. But I do think Shells ultimately will have enough quality, just their calibre of player should be greater than Linfield's. Chris Shields obviously missing, League of Ireland legend, big loss for Linfield. But after that, Shells, in my head, I would be disappointed if they didn't progress. If they do progress, going on to face Carabag, who are in and out of the Champions League almost every other year, so a big calibre team to come up against, obviously a more difficult test.
Yeah, I wouldn't foresee Shells beating them, to be honest with you. I've seen really good Dundalk teams coming up against them in the past and struggling. I've seen Rovers kind of going up against similar calibre of teams, a much better Shamrock Rovers than the Shells side now in comparison, and lost games. So look, Europe can be a bit of a roll of the dice. You just don't know. And maybe with Joey O'Brien inspired Shells, who's galvanising, going, right, well, our manager left us, so it's about time we all show how good we can be and, show him why he shouldn't have left us.
Yeah.
So there could be an element of that, which I'd be delighted to see as well. And
yeah,
who knows? We've seen good European runs over the years. It'd be great to see another couple. I mean, Bowes beat Pauk in Diviva over the first leg and stuff like that. So it can be kind of how ties go for you and stuff like that as well. So sometimes you need an element of luck as well,
Yeah, and I know it's a big loss, Damien Duff going, but they might have that underdog kind of backs against the wall sort of fight about them now that their manager has left. Rovers will play the winner of Cliftonville and then St. Joseph's from Gibraltar in the second round of their Conference League game, which is to be played 2 weeks from now.
You'd imagine that they'll win, like Shells beat St. Joseph's in Gibraltar, and Cliftonville is a bit of a mad one because obviously they kind of have a little bit of an affiliation as well.
Yeah,
as a club.
I'd have to imagine that Rovers would beat either of them, and then St. Pat's to play Hegelman from Lithuania on the 10th of July. St. Pat's, you touched on it there. They've lost 3 games in a row in the League of Ireland. I think they have no wins in their last 4 or 5 games. Really difficult situation right now. Obviously, Stephen Kenny is under pressure because of this, because of the amount of money that they've spent on this squad, because of the amount of money that they've spent on him. And just recently, they haven't been performing. Your thoughts on them recently?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the Cork game when they won. Jamie Lennon scored in the last minute and they were comfortable in that game, and then they conceded a goal, and then Shawnee Maguire scored a penalty, and they just looked all over the place. They got back into it, they got a goal, and then Jamie Lennon scored the last minute winner. I think ever since then, they've just been really struggling to win games and see games out, which is strange, because if you look at their squad, like, they really have a really good squad, and especially in their attacking players. I mean, you've got the 2 strikers, Amelia and Keena. Then you've got El Bazzetti, Jake Mulroney, Simon Power. There's another winger I just can't think of off the top of my head.
Keane Levy.
Yeah. They've got
McClelland.
Yeah, they've got good midfielders. Chris Forrest has just been injured up until recently. Jamie Lennon. They've
Bagley.
Yeah, so they've got good centre backs as well. Gravosti, Joe Redmond, Sean Hoare, Anto Breslin fullback,
Ghanaian international and goal.
They have good players. They've just been strangely off the boil. The Galway game, the keeper's making calamitous errors. So there's just sometimes you just can't attain for like goalkeeping errors and stuff like that. Sometimes just games go against you, and if you can see it against Galway early in games, generally speaking, they're just gonna shut up shop and just absorb and just try and stop you from playing and break it down. And once, if you don't have that kind of mercurial player like a Chris Forrest who can open up at events, because I think he was injured, then you're going to struggle to open up Galway. So that's ultimately how they won. And then Derry, they're starting to get a good run of results under their belt, and they're beating teams. And we know Derry are a good side. But Shamrock Rovers really need a wake up, St. Pat's really need a wake up call, or Stephen Kenny could be gone. Yeah. I don't know how that would work financially, but he's on quite a lucrative contract, so it's speculated anyway. But I think Damien Duff's a free agent now, so you never know.
That might tempt them into pulling the trigger there. I do think they have enough quality in their team to figure it out as the season goes on. However, it can't be understated how bad of a moment that they're in right now, and they're losing ground on their competitors in that European race. I think we both agree that Rovers are the front runners to get the title, but in behind them,
I was just going to say, just on Pats, don't forget at the start of the season we all had them as favourites.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Them Shells and Rovers obviously were the three that were spoken about as the true contenders, and the two Shells and Pats really haven't lived up to that. But like I said, in behind Rovers you've got Bows in second and Drogheda. However, Derry are flying up the table at the moment. They're in really red hot form. If we were to sit here at the end of the season, is it too much to ask for a prediction for you for that European race?
The European race, I think, because it's just, it could go either way.
It's so tight.
Because if Bows fall off a cliff and lose 3 games, to quote Finney Perth, if they lose 3 games, right, and then Shells win 3 games, then they could just completely swap positions there. And realistically, looking at Bows now, they should be finishing minimum 3rd. But if Derry come on strong, if Shells come on strong, and if Pats come on strong, you just don't know. You know what I mean? So it's such a weird league that I could give you a prediction, but it was definitely going to be wrong. Yeah. So I just don't see any point in doing it. I think Derry will finish really strong. I foresee they'll buy in this window. And don't forget, clubs will buy in this window as well, because Shells were looking at players before Dove left. Now that's gone up in the air. I'm sure that Shamrock Rovers will be looking at players. They did sign a striker from up north. Yeah. McGovern, is it?
I think so. I can't remember actually.
John McGovern, I think it is.
And Derry actually did make a sign today, Frizzle in the midfield, but they've already lost. Dom Thomas has been a good player for them this year.
Yeah, Dominic Mysterio.
Yeah.
But the but the thing with Derry is, I think that obviously Tiernan Lynch had to throw a good few players together for a while. So I think now maybe some of them players, like Kevin Holt's been a good signing for them at the back. And you wouldn't know with Derry if they can buy 1 or 2 good players. Obviously Tiernan Lynch knows a good player, and he seems like a good manager. So excuse me, I think with the distraction of Europe for a couple of teams, it could work in other teams' favour this season. Maybe Bows and maybe Derry in that sense.
Yeah, I would agree in a sense, and I always said to myself I'd never put my faith in Derry again, because it just seemed like, as much as I really did like Rory Higgins as a manager, I thought he had a really good kind of tactical head in his shoulders, but his teams just always seem to stumble over the finish line and kind of just run out of steam at the end of the season. We'll see if Tiernan Lynch's team is any different than that. Right now you would say that Bows will probably get it. Drogheda, red hot at the start of the season, are still tipping along at the moment in swapping places between second and third with Bows, it seems like, week to week.
It looks like they're going to lose Warren Davis though.
Yeah, so I do foresee a couple of big losses for Drogheda. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to keep it up. However, doubt Drogheda at your peril, because it seems like anytime people doubt them, they always prove them wrong. However, I'd feel like the smart money right now is Derry. They've just been red hot. However, having said that, I know you touched on it. I wouldn't be surprised at all if St. Pat's or Shells got their act together as well towards the end of the season and picked up that last space. Moving on now to some big news for the Ireland team. Darragh O'Shea signed a new contract with Ipswich, keeping him there until 2030. He was a player that we were kind of looking at. Is he going to move? Is he going to come back into the Premier League? And I would say he's a player who's well capable of playing at the Premier League level, if not even higher. And I don't even think I'd go beyond that and say that he's a player who showed and earned the right to play at a higher level than that. However, on the flip side of that, the pro to this is that he's kind of stabilising a little bit. He's been bouncing around clubs for a couple of years now, stabilising, finding a home at Ipswich. Ipswich are bound to be probably the strongest team in the Championship next year. They probably you'd likely see them coming back up straight away. Although who knows, the Championship is such a difficult league to get out of. Ipswich fans know that better than anybody. Your thoughts on this signing for Darragh O'Shea?
Surprised. I thought he was going to move. I thought he could go back to a Premier League club, but again, I'm happier probably that he's stabilised in his future. Obviously, he's got a really good contract out of it, so I'd be more obliged for players to get their house in order. In that sense, he seems happy at Ipswich. He seems like a leader there. I think he could be their captain on a more regular basis now. He's been captain everywhere he's been so far in his career. So
yeah, and it actually sounds like I think Sam Morsey might be stepping aside or playing a bit more of a kind of bit part role. So you might see him fill in that position.
Yeah, well, look, he's even filled in. I was at the game at Goodison. He was at right back, so he fills.
I mean, fill in as captain.
Yeah,
more permanently.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, even at that, he fills in everywhere and he just does a good job.
Yeah.
And he was one of the reasons why Ipswich got a draw that day, because it was dark arts, which we all know I'm a big fan of. But yeah, I think Darragh, it's good for him, but I don't know how good it's for his international prospects, because if you have someone playing Premier League who is doing better than maybe Jake is playing at centre-back for Everton and Nathan Collins, then I think you might be struggling to get Darragh O'Shea into the team based on the level of which he's playing. Whereas if you have Jake and Nathan playing against the highest level of competitors every week, and who knows, we might even see Nathan playing in Europe for Spurs if he goes to Spurs as well. So, I mean, you won't be getting him out of the team then if that is the case. It's a matter of kind of Darragh O'Shea and Jake and maybe Andrew Omobamidele as well. So we know the competition at centre half, but the good thing about the lads about Darragh is he can play in all four positions of the defensive positions. So left back, centre back, either side, and full back on either side. So I just think he's great to have in the Ireland squad and stuff like that. I'm surprised that he's gone to Ipswich, but at the same time I'm kind of happy for him that he has somewhere now. But I do think he could have gone and played at a higher level on a more consistent basis. A club along the lines of Brentford, someone kind of around even Wolves, and who I know are in for him, would have been a good move. But now he's gone back to the Championship, but they have a good chance of getting back up. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, so I do think they are the strongest squad in the Championship. I'd be hoping to see them go straight back up. I do agree it kind of hurts his chances a little bit, kind of takes the kind of shine off him. I think he was Ipswich's best player along with Liam Delap last season. Certainly
the player of the year.
Yeah, certainly their best defender. And yeah, disappointed not to see him playing Premier League football next season, but I'd like to see him stabilising at a club and kind of finding a more permanent home. And Hamer, I think he isn't too rash with them kind of decisions. He does have that nice balance between picking the informed player and then picking the player who performs for Ireland. He didn't just cast aside Evan Ferguson. He didn't just cast aside Matt Doherty. Even when Jake O'Brien was kind of the hot new thing, or Troy Parrott or Adamida, he did keep them in the fold and gave them the opportunity to win their space back. So I don't think it's kind of game over or ratting for Darragh O'Shea. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I think he still will be a pretty regular fixture in the Ireland team, and great, because we've got a really exciting backline there, and we've talked about it so much here. Of course, Robbie Brady's probably on the back nine of his career at this stage, but you look across that line: Nathan Collins, Darragh O'Shea, Jake O'Brien for the future, but Matt Doherty right now, Caoimhín Kelleher after getting his big move. Things are looking good for the future.
Yeah, 100%. I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, jam-packed show today. We've talked a lot.
Obviously Andrew Omobamidele got his permanent to Strasbourg. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, it's hard to say really, because he never really got a consistent run of games between injury. When he got there, it was just difficult for him when he first moved over. I'm still hopeful that is a good move, because we've seen big players, and we've talked about it a lot in this show. Like players who go abroad, who gamble on themselves, it seems to pay off more often than not for these Irish players. And we know that Andrew Omobamidele has more than enough talent to make it in a league like that. And it might be a better a better platform to showcase his abilities in that league. Because we know how good he is in the ball, we know how athletic he is as well. So I think it is a good move for him, and hopefully he gets a more consistent run of games.
Yeah, well, I do think you look at Jacob Ryan's time in league. He
McDonald's league,
yeah, Uber Eats. But he showed, that he could really excel in that league. He got his move to Everton, took his time to get into the Everton side, but he does look a really good prospect for Everton. And again, the French league, you see so many French players coming to the Premier League because the leagues are very similar. You probably just say the Premier League's faster, but in terms of physicality and everything else, the French league is very similar to the Premier League in that sense. But obviously the Premier League is better, as we know. But so many French players now come from there, so I think it could be a good learning curve for him to go there for a couple of seasons. He's obviously in Europe with Strasbourg. Liam Rosiner seems to really like him and bringing in young players and developing them and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be a good move for him as well. And I'm delighted as well because it gives us an opportunity to go over and see a couple of games and see, a couple of Irish players, playing abroad or playing in Europe, like we saw with Troy last year as well. So I'm excited to see, and the more players we have playing in Europe, the better for our international team as well, because they're being kind of exposed to that level of football at all different levels.
Yeah, brilliant. And just on some kind of slightly smaller Liga news, smaller but still nonetheless very interesting, that Rem, who had been relegated to Stade de Reims, are going to be returning to Ligue 1 because Lyon, because of financial issues, I believe, are being relegated to Ligue 2. So we're going to see John Patrick Finn back in the top division in France.
And Iraqi, is that his name?
Ike Orazi.
Orazi, sorry. Yeah, I mean, lucky in a sense. I mean, they didn't deserve to stay up. But if Lyon have gone down, it's a shame. Massive club, and to see them going through. I hate seeing clubs go through that. We all know, like, a massive club like Shells went through that before as well. So
massive.
Yeah, massive in Ireland. Yeah, but we've seen clubs go through financial stuff, and it's not nice to see when clubs kind of, they get relegated and stuff like that. Like, I don't know the whole ins and outs of, like, if they're doing some dodgy stuff. It seems like they were. You wouldn't get punished drastically like that, but I just hope it doesn't, like. Didn't Bordeaux get moved down to like the 4th division?
Yeah.
And Andy Carroll's playing for them, and like they were the big club not too long ago. I just don't like seeing clubs kind of going through that, unless of course it's Rangers. But other than that, I don't like to see it. But for John Patrick Finn, yeah, it's lucky for him in a sense. But I think he needs to get his act together now, and Hamer's told him what he needs to improve on, and it's up to him to improve on that, build his case, and get back into the Ireland squad in September. But to be perfectly honest with you, from what I've heard about him, from what Hamer said as well about him not being ready, I don't think we should be getting our hopes up on him till next summer. To be honest with you, or after January, sort of, kind of, if we are in a World Cup thing, if we are in a World Cup or a playoff or whatever, I would say from January onwards he needs to get his head in the game, and he could go on to be someone who we heavily rely on, but he needs to prove, he needs to improve in the areas in which the manager has said. He didn't say what areas exactly he needs to improve, but he did tell him that he needs to improve. He said it in his press conference. So for me, I wouldn't be hanging my hopes on John Patrick Finn now. Haven't heard that. Not saying he's a bad player or anything like that. It just mean that if the manager doesn't trust him, there's a high percentage he's not going to play. Yeah,
I mean, regardless of how much he's done at club level, 5 minutes in a friendly against Luxembourg it'll be a tall task from here to really see him get that much game time for Ireland, to, if we do qualify for a World Cup, having him in that squad. So would be quite a tall task. But look, it's great to get another edition of French Football Fan TV here today. But the main thing is that we can both agree on is that Dublin remains red and black.
Yeah, and on that note,
see you next time.